Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 316 of the Canadian Football Countdown, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network and the Alternative Football Network. We're back once again with another edition of our 2025 CFL season deep dive series. And good news, BC Lions fans, it's your time. As Adam said pre-show, it is the BC Lions episode today. We're going to dive deep into their 2025 season, take a look back at all the ups and the downs, playoff run, and where things went wrong and where things went really well and what's ahead for the offseason. We've got Ryan, we've got Adam here tonight, and we've got special guest. Very excited to have one of the premium members, I would say, of our Discord community. Always here in the live chat quite often throughout the night as well. The great Richard is here, also known as Cheppy. Did I pronounce that right?
Oh yeah. No, Cheppy's my nickname. I got it in university, so yeah. People had a hard time pronouncing my real name, so they just call me Cheppy. So
right on. Well, welcome here tonight. Happy to have you here. Number one BC Lions fan in the Discord. I gave you a run for your money for a little bit there, but I think it's undisputed.
We take them all. We'll take as many fans as we can get. So
that's fair. Happy to have you here tonight. And Adam, how are you doing today?
Yeah, doing very well, except for the fact that it's like minus 30 with a wind chill here. Everything's good.
Still short.
Yeah, no, real good outside. Other than that, really, I mean, it's football season, especially after the week we've had, I guess, for, at least football season in the CFL.
Yeah. I have a bone to pick with that. Like, that's a topic for another day, but like schedule release day came out yesterday. We're recording this Wednesday night, December 10th. Schedule came out on, I guess, Monday, right? Not yesterday. Was it yesterday?
It was
the day before.
It was yesterday, I think.
Was it yesterday? All right. Okay. Yeah, that was a flurry of activity there. And then all of the major news of QB signings and things like that came out the same day. You can't save it for a different day and spread it out to give us more of a balance of things to talk about. I guess I can't have everything I want, but no, it was a fun day of CFL chatter going on yesterday. Leads to a fun couple weeks here on the podcast. Busy couple weeks here on the Canadian Football Countdown. If you missed it last episode, we had the fellows from the Alouettes Flight Deck podcast on here to chat about the Alouettes 2025 season. That was a lot of fun. Week before, Adam and I met with Alex from the Piffles podcast, chatted about the Riders season. Today now with Richard, we're doing the Lions deep dive. And then we're right back at it with another deep dive coming Tuesday night where we'll have Rick from the Hamilton Sports Network or the Ticats Talk Network. Discord community will know him as FM fan as well. He'll be here to chat about the Ticats for their deep dive with us. And then Thursday, Adam, I believe Trey, and I are going to get together and talk all about the 2026 CFL schedule and the announcements of it all and the quirks and the good and the bad and the ugly of the 2026 schedule. So stay tuned. 2 episodes coming next week. Lots of content here to come throughout the offseason here on the Canadian Football Countdown, which is brought to you by our presenting sponsor, Game Time TV. You can learn more at GameTimeTV.ca or at Facebook.com/GameTimeTVMB. Of course, you can also check out our Discord community for more chatter in between episodes. You can chat with me, Adam, Trey, Mike, Richard. Richard's in there quite often as well. It's a good time. I don't know. Maybe I should be turning it over to you, Richard, to plug the Discord here. What you got to say about it?
The Discord's great. Yeah, like if you play fantasy, it is a wonderful resource. Lots of charts and stats, at least most of the year. But yeah, it's lots of guys to pick brains and ask questions, and and they touch on all kinds of other sports too. So if you're looking for headlines or whatever, usually I can find it there. So
you are now the head of our marketing team. Congrats. You passed the interview. No, that was great. Thank you for that. Of course, we always do want to acknowledge that the Canadian Football Countdown is brought to you from Treaty 1 territory, traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, the homeland of the Métis Nation, as well as from Treaty 4 territory, traditional territory of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis Nation. think that's all the housekeeping notes out of the way. So let's put on our snorkel and our flippers and dive deep into the BC Lions 2025 season. Coming into the year, they came in with off of a 9-9 record the year before, finished third in the West. I believe fell to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in the playoffs that year, if I'm not mistaken. And this year finished with an 11-7 record, second in the West. They knock off Calgary in round one in the playoffs, but they do fall short to the eventual Grey Cup champion Saskatchewan Roughriders. Lots to talk about from this season. I'm very excited to dive deep into this. But first, we have to look back on what our expectations were coming into the year. Let's start with you, Richard. You're close to home, obviously, with the team. What were your expectations for the team?
Yeah, I mean, I had some mixed expectations. I was trying to, with Nathan Rourke coming back, his first full season, I obviously was excited for that. Thought there was a ton of potential, ton of things that could go right for the team. But I also knew that new GM, new head coach, we didn't know how the relationship between Buck and Nathan was going to go. Didn't quite know, how the defense was going to transition to, Mike Benavides taking over. My biggest questions were more like even the locker room. The end of last year the year before was so like tumultuous in that locker room with VA and Rourke and Campbell kind of feeling like he lost the locker room a bit. So I just tried to temper my expectations. And, the first half of the year was kind of what I thought it was going to be. They won a couple games, they lost a bunch of games, they won a couple more. Like it was, a bit of a roller coaster ride to start the year. And they kind of put it together closer to the end and figured a few things out. And, I didn't actually get to the Grey Cup, but after the end of the season, you couldn't help but hope for it as a Lions fan. But yeah, when it's at the start of the season, I was like, if we make the playoffs, second, third, I'd be happy with that. So yeah, that's where I fell.
Adam, what about you?
Yeah, I think I was in the same boat. I thought that the BC Lions were going to have to take a step forward this year to prove that getting rid of Vernon Adams Jr. was the right decision, and Nathan Rourke was a big piece of that. They had everything into Nathan Rourke and Matthew Betts, essentially, is what they were going for, and it worked for them in the end. But you know what? There was a lot of questions. Buck Pierce, you're right, again, first-year head coach. General manager new again as well for the BC Lions. But you looked at that team and you thought, okay, they're going to be better, but where are they going to fit in with Saskatchewan making a push last year, with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers being the Winnipeg Blue Bombers again? Everybody had the Winnipeg Blue Bombers still as this kind of team world beater, and you just didn't know where exactly BC fit in. You knew that they were probably better than the Edmonton Elks. You knew that they were probably probably better than Calgary. Calgary at the beginning of the year, everybody had right down as right in the basement. But you just knew that the BC Lions were going to be a better team, but you didn't know how good they could be. And let's face it, I think we'll be talking about it right away here. At the beginning of the season, this team really didn't kind of jump out of the gates really quickly. But we'll get to that right away. Yeah, no, I had the BC Lions kind of right in the middle. It was going to take some time to get used to the Buck Pierce schemes and everything, I thought. And I kind of had this team going into the playoffs, but I didn't know if they were going to be hosting one or not hosting one. I had them originally, I think, as not hosting. I think it was Winnipeg and Saskatchewan hosting. So, yeah, that's what I had for the Lions going into this one.
I think I might have been the lowest on them coming in. They were a team that really conflicted me because I was a little concerned about the defense, but then thought that, because the defense had its struggles the year before as well. And then offensively, I truly felt coming into the year that Nathan Rourke was going to have that bounce back season because he wasn't traveling all around the NFL. He had a full training camp, a full off season. Like, he was going to come prepared to play. We'd seen what he's capable of in the past, and it was a tough circumstance for him to come in And like you said, Richard, with the whole locker room debacle late in the season there, the chemistry was just all off. The team wasn't gelling. So I had hope that he was going to bounce back, but wasn't sure he had the tools necessary there, because looking at the receiving core coming into the year, last year we talked about the big three receivers for them. Justin McInnis, fantastic. I think finished first in the league. Alexander Holland started the year hot and then trailed off, and they let him go. And then I think, didn't they bring him back at some point and then cut in the offseason and then cut him immediately?
Yeah, they got in trouble for it. They weren't allowed to, because he was injured, and then they cut him, but then they had to kind of take him. They had to eat a bunch of salary, I think is what it had to do. So
Gotcha.
they didn't take him back, but there was
some weirdness going on.
Yeah. So
yeah, and then you had Keon Hatcher, who just came back late October the year before after a massive long injury and didn't quite seem himself at times. And then a lot of unknowns kind of at receiver for the team. So I was not sure what we were going to get out of the offense. I thought it would be better, but I didn't know if he was going to have the weapons available. We come to learn over the course of the season, as we're going to get into talking about that right away as well, that he had the weapons available and or crafted the weapons, so to say, that he needed in order to be fantastic this year. So I think I had them fourth in the West coming into the year. I want to say I had them ahead of Calgary, but I think I was higher on Edmonton making the jump this year with Trey Ford as the starter over them, which obviously did not end up happening. So yeah, that's a deep dive for another day. So those were our expectations for the team coming into the year. We're going to go through now and kind of talk about some of the major discussion points from the season. And I think it has to start with, a combination of Nathan Rourke himself. He goes on to win the most outstanding player. And despite those concerns for the offense that I just talked about, the most productive offense in CFL history occurred in the year 2025. And that was the BC Lions, who were first in most statistical categories, like points per game. They were scoring over 30 points a game, yards, 430 yards a game of total offense, led the league in rushing touchdowns, second in passing touchdowns, averaged 325 passing yards a game, good for first in the league. We're averaging 8.5 yards on first down.
Yeah.
That's an average. This team moved the ball like crazy through the air, 30-plus yard completions, first in the league. They had 41 of those. And the offensive line, too, even, allowing a league low 20 sacks on the season. Everything seemed to be going well for this team offensively. Richard, I think you put here in the notes the first down production, like we said, 8.5 yards. That was almost 2 yards better than any other team. And they were scoring TDs at a pretty high rate. What was it about the offense that just lit it up with no mercy this year?
Yeah, I mean, I would put a lot of the onus on Rourke's, A, his decision making, and I would say B, the offensive line actually would be one of my biggest turnarounds for this team. Last year, just seemed like, Vernon Adams had to run around to try and make plays. And this year, Rourke had to do that too. And he gets a lot of the credit for those, only 20 sacks, but the offensive line actually was able to run the ball. We weren't just a one-dimensional team, between Rourke's rushing, between Butler, and then throwing a little bit of Horvat here and there. It was, at least teams had to respect the run enough. Not totally, not like Saskatchewan or, Hamilton when they had Bell going or whatever, but, or Edmonton, I think when Rankin was really going, but, they had to at least think that they were going to at least run the ball as opposed to just throwing it 50 times a game. So I think, to me, that is going to be one of the keys, and I'll touch on that later on when we get into moving into next year is, how can they keep that going? So, but yeah, those would be some of my keys.
Adam, what about you? What stood out for you the most from this offensive explosion this season?
Well, I think what stood out to me was how much Nathan Rourke means to the BC Lions. Essentially, when you looked at the beginning of the season, Nathan Rourke played that one game, and then I think he was injured for 2 or 3 of them right off the bat. And when Jeremiah Mazzoli went in, I'm sorry, this was a different BC Lions team completely, even though they did have all those other pieces around them that made them look like a decent team. Again, Abelhart looked better this year. You had Barry Hill kind of have a little bit more of a better year. Even Javon Katoy had some more catches than usual, had some big catches when he needed them. And Justin McInnes didn't really have to do quite as much, but everything revolved around Nathan Rourke and him being healthy. When he was on his game, Nathan Rourke was essentially, I mean, I don't think I really would question. I was around in the 90s, but Doug Flutie would have a hard time keeping up with Nathan Rourke and how Nathan Rourke played this year. I mean, he was just unstoppable. And to be honest with you, I cannot believe that the Indianapolis Colts did not call Nathan Rourke back this last week. Sorry, I'm just saying. Honestly, he was that good. He's an incredible player. And you're right, Jeppy. The plays on the offensive line improved to help Nathan Rourke out a little bit. But the elusiveness of Nathan Rourke is just something else as well. I mean, he can run the ball. If you don't respect his run, he's going to make that like a lightning throw to one of his receivers right away. And he has just about as quick of a throw and a getaway throw as Trevor Harris. And Trevor Harris is known for that quick pass. Nathan Rourke can do the exact same thing, or he can make even burn you deep and be accurate doing it. So, I mean, Nathan Rourke, honestly, they might be changing the MOP award name eventually, honestly, because he's that good. And yes, again, your offensive line was better. I think that they made a big pickup in running back as well for BC. I thought that the signing back of James Butler was smart. I really did think that was a good move. But I think everything really did go with what Nathan Rourke wanted. And you know what? That team started to gel partway through the year. And once they got going, all, well, downhill or downfield from there. Because honestly, yeah, Nathan Rourke just pretty much was that offense.
Well, yeah, we've got a comment here in the live chat from Greta about Rourke being a perfectionist and practicing relentlessly. And you saw that in all the interviews, too, how early he gets there, how much he focuses on honing his craft, and he's really dedicated to it. Like, this is a special guy that the BC Lions will have hopefully around for quite some time now, because he said he's tried the NFL route. He's not just going to go back there for, hold a clipboard basically situation, bounce around between teams. And honestly, like, I don't know if he's getting that dedicated shot from the NFL anymore that he wants after he tried it the first time and nobody signed him. Like, 44-year-old Phillip Rivers can come in for an emergency start in Indianapolis, as Adam was alluding to before, Grandpa Rivers. But I don't think it's in the cards for Rourke to try that route, and I don't think it's something that he should try at this point in time. Like, he has the opportunity, if he can keep this level of play up and keep healthy, to make a name for himself as one of the greats in the CFL, and I think that will go a long way for a local kid like himself. And all of the chatter in the offseason was, do you stick with VA? Do you go with Rourke? And I honestly can't believe that was serious chatter, because it's a no-brainer to me, given the age between the two, given what Rourke had accomplished in the past. Like, yeah, it sucks for Vernon Adams to be kind of cast off out of BC, but Rourke is that guy of the future that you're going to sign to a long-term contract if you're the BC Lions.
But you got to remember also, even at the beginning of this season, when Nathan Rourke got that oblique injury, there were guys still saying it. Is Nathan Rourke the guy? Is he back? Can he actually do this? Because there was a lot of questions. I got Nathan Rourke in our CFL fantasy draft for the private league for practically Brady Oliveira, essentially.
Well, wasn't it Rourke and Olette for Oliveira and the great Chad Kelly?
Yeah,
I don't know who I wouldn't veto that trade, but
yeah, I might have got a little bit of an advantage on that one. And not only that, we play a keeper league, so Anyways,
Yeah, not looking
just thought I'd
forward to
remind you
that.
of that, Ryan. Anyways,
Let him
no,
go.
honestly though, it was the talk at the even partway through the season when he had that oblique injury. He didn't look 100%. He came back. He played, I think, was it against the Riders? I think in Saskatchewan, and he
Yep.
didn't look right out there. But
Yeah.
you know what? After he got rid of that oblique injury, if there's any questions anymore, you really don't watch CFL football. That's all I gotta say.
And I could see some coming in. I could see some concerns about him coming into the year, right? Because of the struggles down the stretch last year. His really good stretch was 2-3 years ago where he played 10 games and then got injured and hadn't been the same since the injury. So the question mark was there of can he go back to that form he initially saw? And we saw it right in week 1. I mean, he played the Edmonton Elks, who he torches every time he plays. It's not a fair matchup between those two teams when he's out.
Ryan, I should add that you picked the Edmonton Elks in that game.
Did I? No, I didn't.
Sure did. I
Prove
will find
it.
the film. I will get the film for week 1.
I guarantee you I did not.
I would have a hard time believing that, but
I gave up hope on the Edmonton
because
Elks.
I said you're going to pick the Edmonton Elks in BC. I'm certain I remember that.
No. We'll settle this after the show. Meet me in the parking lot, Adam.
Fair enough. Bring your computers.
Yeah, exactly. I have a hard time. Yeah, I have a hard time believing that would be the case, but I could be wrong. Go ahead and look up the footage after the show. If we had an intern, we would get them to do it for us, but we don't. So I guess we'll have to look it up. But yeah, the thing to me that stood out the most about Rourke's performance and the offensive performance is the ability, better than any other team in the CFL, to move 100 yards downfield in about a minute and 5 plays, because there were some drives where it's 20-yard completion, 30-yard completion, 20-yard completion, touchdown quite frequently. And that goes to that big play alert where they were moving the ball with ease quite often, and he wasn't afraid to sling it downfield for a big gain. And the mobility, the stretch as well, might have been the playoffs, might have been the final couple games of the regular season where he rattled off a couple 40, 50-yard huge runs, even if he wasn't throwing the ball. Like, that's something that the defenses have to respect. So it was a no-brainer to me that he was the most outstanding player this year. I know some might make the argument that Bo Levi Mitchell had better stats in some categories, but you can't deny what Nathan Rourke did this year. And it was really encouraging to see that kind of offense with Buck Pierce in his first season as head coach. And I think that's where I want to go next here as we kind of talk about this a little bit, is you never know what you're going to get from a head coach in the first year. I still very much with BC go back to Devon Claybrooks, who was this guy touted to be the next big thing as a coach after fantastic defensive coordinator in Calgary, and it just did not gel right, it seemed, with the team. The team never kind of bought in underneath him, and from there, he didn't last long in his tenure there. Buck Pierce had a fantastic run as an offensive coordinator in Winnipeg, drew up some great offensive game plans, also got some heat on him for some of his calls and stuff like the Grey Cup as well. And I've always historically been a big fan of Jordan Maximick's offense and what he was able to pull out of guys like Nathan Rourke. And so moving on from him and moving to the Buck Pierce offense, you weren't sure what you were going to get. But I think some of that big play nature comes as a result of that Buck Pierce game plan, because you look at it in Winnipeg as well. What was Zach Collaros' game for the last number of years? It was those deep shots to Dalton Schoen. It was those deep balls, a lot of that. And I think some of that carried over in the game plan for Nathan Rourke here. Richard, how did you feel about Buck Pierce in his first year here as head coach?
Yeah, I mean, I was really impressed with him, actually. Like, I thought he had a great first year. Like, he got a winning record, and he preached physicality. He wanted to set a tone that we weren't going to be pushed around, because that was kind of always the thing with Rick Campbell, was that there was always kind of question marks of the toughness of the team and whether or not they would be able to handle those cold weather games when it turned to more of you had to have a run game, you had to stop the run kind of mentality, and whether they could actually pull that off. And so I don't know if he's necessarily this year had all the horses that he could do to pull that off, but I think he's getting there. And so, I do appreciate that. And I think, him and Rourke together, I think, that's the main reason he signed here. I think he saw Rourke and was just like, brought him back to his, early Zach Caleros days when he could dance around in that pocket and make people miss and then throw the deep ball to Dalton Schoen. That was why Winnipeg was so dangerous, because Caleros was so hard to sack. His footwork in the pocket and the way he was able to move around and just not necessarily run like Rourke does, but he often eluded tackles and managed to make these, extend plays, and so I think he saw that and was like, yeah, I'm in. Like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to work with someone like that. And, I think his offense is suited to balance. I know Trey always harps on Buck Pierce and his offense, and, but, I enjoyed watching it this year, and, we'll see what next year brings. I think the sky's the limit, like I said. So I have more concerns on the defensive side. So, like you brought up Devon Claybrooks, Mike Benavides also had a stint as the Lions head coach for a while, and it didn't work out very well either. And so I think he got in right after Wally Buono was the head coach, and that's a tough act to follow. And so, him stepping into the defensive coordinator role, I'm not sure why Buck picked him, or if that was, Ryan Rigmaiden pick, or how the dynamics went with all that. But, I definitely have more question marks about the defense than the offense moving into the offseason. So,
yeah, I think I agree with you too. The defense, I mean, it was not a bad defense. It was definitely a ball hawk worthy one. I mean, I'm still got shivers every time I hear the word Robert Carter Jr. and him flying through the air to get that one-handed pick against Hamilton. That thing was utterly insane. But you know what? This was a very kind of high risk and seemed like a high risk defense is what I would almost call it sometimes. They could get burned a little bit deep once in a while trying for a pick, and Saskatchewan was nice as well. And most of the defense was based around Matthew Betts. If you look, again, 15 tackles, I think, this whole season, or maybe even more. I'm trying to just take a look at that. Yeah, 15 sacks this season, 42 defensive tackles, lots of play for him. And a big one that you guys added in there was Deontay Williams. I thought he was going to be good in Saskatchewan, but unfortunately BC got him. And he had lots of tackles this year as well at 73 tackles. Overall, BC's defense wasn't terrible, but it had those moments where you could run against that defense. It felt like quite a little bit is what I found. The front line maybe wasn't as strong as what it could be, and it relied a lot on Matthew Betts making that big tackle when he had to make that tackle. And if it didn't happen, all of a sudden you got to Gary Peters or you got to another guy in the backfield there, and you were kind of feeling like, okay, we could maybe make some runs here on the BC Lions.
Yeah, I mean, the type of defense they were running, from what I understood, was they had a lot of different packages. So we had a lot of different personnel moving in and out all the time. And he often got caught, especially end of the game when the offense started running hurry up offense. He couldn't get those changes in, and you get stuck with the wrong personnel, and he got burned. Like there's a bunch of games that Saskatchewan, the West Final, is, I remember TJ Lee talking after the game about, oh yeah, we got stuck with the personnel and we couldn't get off the field, and they just ripped us apart. I was like, well, yeah, you were only rushing 3 guys. Like Trevor is going to pick anybody apart. You're only rushing 3 guys. So, but yeah, so just things like that where you kind of go, I think you need a better base defense, and yes, you need to be able to adapt, but that base defense has to be able to at least hold their own a little bit better than what it did in those critical situations where you can't get changes. And so, that I would like to see addressed a little bit more. So, but I don't know how much input Buck was having on the defense. He's, head coach and offensive coordinator, first time head coach. Like, I think part of the reason he picked Benavides was because he was just like, you do your thing over there. I don't have to worry about it. So would be my guess. So.
And I mean, Benavides has had great seasons as defensive coordinator in the past as well. Like, I put him exactly in the Paul LaPolice category of he's great when he's a coordinator, but please don't make him head coach again, right? Because he's good at what he does, but when you try to stretch someone thin or to an additional role, oftentimes they're spread too thin. They can't do their initial job great. Like, I felt the same in Calgary for the first couple seasons once Dave Dickinson took on head coach and GM role, that he lost some of his spark in an offensive coordinator and as a head coach there because he was spread too thin. I'm happy to see that hasn't been an issue for Buck in his first year as head coach over in BC. But when we're talking about the defense here, I mean, looking at the statistical categories, yeah, they struggled. They were bottom 3, bottom 4 in a lot of the categories here. They gave up the 7th most points per game, 8th most offensive touchdowns, the most rush attempts, and 7th most rushing yards a game, over 100 rushing yards against. So you talk about the struggles of the run defense there, and they gave up, quite a few touchdowns there, kind of bottom half of the league, 30-plus yard completion, et cetera, et cetera. The one thing where they did turn it on in the second half of the season that we didn't see as much in the first half is in the sacks, in the interceptions, the turnovers. And that's where the defense seemed to kind of come into its own. It seemed lost at times early in the season. And it seemed like Matthew Betts, as much as the Nathan Rourke of it all was working out with that contract and giving him the money, it kind of seemed early in the season like maybe it wasn't worth getting Matthew Betts what they were paying him. Then I forget which game it was, kind of in the middle of the season there. But he puts up 3 or 4 sacks in one game and then goes on a run with 9 of them in a 2 or 3 game span or something like that. Finishes the year as 15 and leading the sack race there. So he turned it on late in the season. The defensive backs started making those interceptions as well. And that, I think, helped to deliver more confidence in the team. But the nice thing is, even when you have a defense that struggles like this, most of the games coming in were kind of like, well, if this turns into a shootout and the defense can't do its thing, like, who's going to score more points than the Lions offense? Like, you can score 30 on them and you're still going to lose most of your games because they're going to score 35, for example. And that seemed to be the case now. Bonus once the defense started stepping up late in the season.
Until you run into a Red Heart or Nick Arbuckle.
Yes. Until you run into that 51, what was that, 52-34 loss to the Argos in week number 12 was certainly something to marvel at there.
Crazy. So. Yeah, the only thing on the defense I would say is that, like, his pass defense was really good most of the year. Like, they're finished 3rd with yards and pass attempts. People figured out how to score on them. They just, try to run the ball. And that, like Adam said, like that, you could run the ball on the Lions. And so, having that old adage of you win the game in the trenches, I felt like their offense could do that a little bit better than the defense could. So, I think guys like Jonah Tavai, they picked up, who was it, Bradley and Nay, Levi Bell, closer to the end of the season. Those guys really, really helped with their pass rush a little bit more. And during that 5-game win streak, they just, those were some of the additions halfway through the season that, really made a difference for them. So.
Adam, I think you had something you were about to weigh in there?
No, not really, actually. Yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying there, Richard. I think, like I said, those additions added a little bit to it. And you're right, Ryan, also on your side, they did become more of an interception team. But you're right, it was mainly, I was all relying on this offense. And in the end, if you could get 40 points on them or something crazy, you had to just try to outgun Nathan Rourke. And I mean, sometimes you could do it. I mean, the one thing I could see though was in that West final, especially. I didn't really watch much of the last game of the season, other than that one play, which was clearly not a catch by Keon Hatcher. I'm sorry. Just wanted to throw it out there right off the bat.
Just like the last play of the Western final, right?
Absolutely. So that
What
wasn't a
do
catch.
you have against elbows, Adam?
What's that?
What do you have against elbows?
They shouldn't be up. Anyways, hey, I'm from Saskatchewan. I gotta say that. Anyways, no, honestly, you know what though? When you watch that game though, if it was any other quarterback than Nathan Rourke, the quarterback would have been on like about probably 5 or 6 extra times in that game because the offensive line. I'm sorry, it was better, Richard. That game, it wasn't.
No,
that game against Saskatchewan, they were going to get burned if it was Jeremiah Mazzoli, for example, in there or Chase Bryce, it would have been ugly. But luckily, lots of times it was Nathan Rourke, and Nathan Rourke can escape from, I'm pretty much sure, from a straitjacket while going down the Grand Canyon at this point. So.
When we talk about that offensive line, though, I want to come back to that because I was floored when I looked at the stats and saw that they only allowed 20 sacks on the season and were first in the league in that category because those first couple games were rough for that offensive line. In the first game against the Elks, which, by the way, Adam dug up the stats and he claims that here has proof that I did indeed pick Edmonton to cover at +5.5 in week 1. June was a fever dream for me, so I'm going to say I wasn't in my right mindset when I was making that pick, clearly.
Excuses.
Yeah. But besides that, like the next 2 games, the home and home with Winnipeg, that first one in particular was probably one of the worst offensive line performances I have seen in my lifetime. Maybe only rivaled by the Las Vegas Raiders a couple of times this year, but that have been rough. But that game in particular, like there was pressure on Rourke every single play. It seemed he got sacked a number of times. His passing was like, I want to say like 3 for 11 in the first half or something like that until he hit Hatcher on that long bomb and to kind of open things up a little bit and get back into it. And then he goes down with an injury. Mazzoli has a nightmare of a time those next couple of games. Like we're sitting there through week 4 at a 1-3 record for the Lions, and it's looking a little bleak. Like, you know, this is the same offensive line we saw last year. Can they hold their own if they can't keep Rourke healthy? Like, we don't have confidence in Mazzoli here. So I am honestly shocked that they turned it around, and despite however many they gave up in those 2 games against Winnipeg to basically go probably averaging 1 sack a game, if that, the rest of the season from there is an impressive feat that they deserve to be commended for.
The one thing though that I'd like to see, and I mean, I'm probably got to phone DT for this one here. How many pressures did BC Lions offensive line allow? Because you got to remember, how many of those were Nathan Rourke escaped from a sack, and how many of them were right? I mean, you look when Jeremiah Mazzoli was in there, that team was getting smoked. But yet, when Nathan Rourke came back and was healthy, when he wasn't, they were still getting a few sacks on him. But once the Rourke got healthy, I think it was a lot of also magician from, again, Mr. Rourke.
It's interesting, though, because, like, you know, the 20 sacks include the 2 games that Mazzoli started. So, and I even looked up the stats on that because I was just like, I'm curious how many times. And then I think there was only 1 sack in those 2 games. And one of them was against Saskatchewan. So I was just I was kind of surprised because I don't think Saskatchewan, you know, they pressured him enough that they had like 2 or 3 interceptions, you know, but, you know, so, you know, pressures, I do agree with you, Adam. How many did he get out of? How much, you know, poor offensive line play did he cover up because of his play? How much did James Butler, being a really good blocking back, cover up? You know, like he's one of those guys that, like, his rushing yards, I don't think that's why they signed him. I think they signed him as, you know, the last protector for Nathan Rourke. And then if he'd been in for one of their last plays on offense against Saskatchewan, I think that Rourke gets that first down, and we're not talking about who caught that ball or who didn't catch that ball. And, so because Horvath clearly missed his block. So, you just kind of go, it happens. It's part of the game, and you got to make it, you got to fight through those things. But, it's one of those things that he is known for. And I think that's one of the reasons why they brought him back. So,
yeah, and you got to remember also James Butler was kind of a game time decision, sort of. I mean, you knew he was going to play,
right,
but he was had a leg injury, I guess, just during that game as well. So again, that's why I put Xander Horvath out there. But you're right. If it was James Butler out there, very likely we're talking about maybe the BC Lions in the Grey Cup, and who knows what would have happened there. Without a doubt. And I was absolutely, after he got the first 8 yards, I was like, okay, well, I was sitting with Trevor Harris's dad, and I was just about ready to start consoling him because I didn't expect that to work, that the Riders actually could get pressure on him. But honestly, that would be a very interesting question, though, is how much pressure, how much was blocked up by James Butler as well? Because you're right, Butler is probably one of the best blocking backs in the league.
Yeah.
Not only that, one of the best receiving backs in the league, and a fantastic season for James Butler. And I'm happy to see it too, because the way things ended in Hamilton didn't sit right with Butler. Like whatever dental work or whatever it was that led to Greg Bell taking over as the lead back, like that was the right decision for them, because Greg Bell was the hot hand and he's turned out very good for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. But also sucks to see somebody like Butler go through that as well and end up being cast off, and getting the chance to come back to BC, where I thought he was at his best in his first season, where he got to play with Rourke. He looked very good there. I believe they played together in BC originally, and then coming back, rattling off, what was it? I just had his stats up here: 1,200 yards in 17 games, 439 through the air, 12 total touchdowns, 70 targets. Like 70 targets for a running back is pretty darn good. That is, I was just looking up how many that is. He's 35th in the league in total targets as a running back, which is similar actually to Rankin and Bell and Oliveira, some of these other guys. So it's interesting that the running backs seem to be getting a lot more targets than I feel like they have in the past across the board. But Butler's always been one of those premium guys. And for a touchdown, it seemed almost every game. You pair that with, we talked about before, my preseason concerns of, do they have the receiving core that they need and the depth at receiver that they need to support Nathan Rourke? We've hardly even talked about the receivers here today so far. Keon Hatcher, pretty darn good bounce back season, 1,688 yards and 9 touchdowns. He's the most dominant receiver in the CFL pretty much any given week. He was top 10 on the fantasy charts almost every week. Justin McInnes kind of started slow, I thought, at the start of the year. I actually drafted him, or he was my keeper in our private fantasy league, and I made the mistake at one point early in the season. I dropped him and kept Stanley Berryhill over him, because Berryhill was the hot hand at the start of the season, who was a really nice breakout player for the team that we hadn't seen much of the year before. He puts up 713 yards, most of that coming early in the season. Started slow, but had some big games, finishes at 863. And then Travon Catoy is always reliable for around 600, 700 yards every year, it seems. So they benefited also, I think, from their receiving core. It stayed pretty healthy throughout the year. I don't know if about the depth options. We never really got to see a ton of them. But what do you think on the receiving core this year, Richard?
I was really happy with our receiving core. Like, a lot of guys stepped up. A lot of different roles were, we didn't quite know who was going to be the deep threat. We knew McInnes, really great possession receiver, tall, going to go up and make those contested catches. I didn't think that have as many yards as he did the year before. He had the Dominic Rhymes and these other guys around him that, gave him the space, because he wasn't the guy that they were thinking would get all the catches. So people eventually clued into that. But the year before, he benefited from some massive games. I think he had 200 and something yards in one game alone, where, it's really going to boost your stats. You can get away with 40, 50 yard games if you have a 200 yard game, and it averages itself out a little bit better too. But yeah, I thought, Hatcher was money all year long. So really glad they brought him back. Before they brought him back, I was like, who are they going to throw to? Like, McInnes isn't going to get the ball every play, so it was good to see him back. Katoy, I had hopes for him from last year. I think they're just scratching the surface with how they can use him, because he is such a dynamic player as far as what he can do for your offense, whether it's blocking to, to running plays on the inside. He's just a hard guy to cover and a really hard guy to tackle. Like, with his size and his frame, he's basically like a basketball player out there sometimes, you think. And so, I would like to see them get him the ball more, but I do know that he got injured a couple times, and it's kind of been one of the things he's struggled with a little bit over these last couple of years, is tends to get a little bit dinged up. And I don't know if that's because he's playing closer to the center, like he's never on the wide outs, so he's in the traffic zones, he's getting more contact, more potential to get rolled up on ankles and different things like that. So there is going to be more wear on your body, but yeah, Everhart was great to see. I thought he kind of started out the season super hot, same with Berryhill, and then they kind of tapered back as McInnes kind of took over some of that role kind of later in the season. And so, yeah, it was interesting to see, because, Everhart's targets, I think, really declined over the year. And, but I think he had such a hot start that you didn't really notice it as much when the final stats came out. But yeah, no complaints about our receivers.
Yeah, no, I think that's right about what I'm thinking. The same thing too with the receivers. I mean, at the beginning of the year, I looked at it and I said, okay, they've got Keon Hatcher. He's good, but what's he really going to do? He's just getting off of an injury from last October. He should be okay. Yeah, they got Justin McInnes, who's going to be their number one, is what I figured. And what are you going to do now that you got Alex Hollins isn't coming back, is what the big question was for me. With Hollins gone out of there, I was like, okay, they got to find a number 3 receiver. Berryhill at the beginning of the season, like Ryan said earlier, was that guy that I thought they leaned on a little bit. And then they turned back to Hatcher. I mean, there was a while there in CFL, you picked Rourke, you picked Hatcher, and then you worried about the rest of your roster, because that's just the way it went. I mean, and then after a while, McInnes did kind of turn into the guy that also you had to pick as well. I know that there was some guys when we were getting into the finals of the podcast fantasy league, they would pick up the 2 receivers from BC, Nathan Rourke, and then they would throw whoever they could fit in there for budget, and who cares? I mean, that they didn't really care about the rest of it. And they were winning. I think one made it to the league final in the end, because that's the way they were rolling it. And it was a good strategy, because BC did just have the 2 really solid receivers all season long. And you're right, Brian, no real injuries for the BC Lions to report. I mean, there was a few guys that they tried to rotate in once every so often, but really. And the other one also is, you were saying, Richard, about Javon Katoy. He is one of those guys that I think is almost like the Tommy Neild or the Mitch Picton of what the Rough Riders have. He's one of those guys that's kind of a utility knife. If you need him to make that big catch when you need him to make the big catch, he'll make it. If you need a short catch and just need somebody to get the ball rolling to kind of kill the clock, he'll do that too. So when they look for a play, when they need a play, they do go to Javon Katoy. But when they're looking for their bread and butter, it's still going to be McInnes and it's going to be Hatcher. And I don't know if I'm letting anything foreshadow for any of our shows later on. But, yeah, Hatcher's getting paid like a top receiver now, I'll tell you that.
Definitely.
He deserves it for sure.
Yeah.
Or go ahead.
He bet on himself and he won. Let's put it that way. So took the 1-year deal and it paid off. So good for him. So
Absolutely. You're kind of talking about the utility knife that is Javon Catoy, and I think that he can kind of be that unsung hero type of player, and kind of want to talk about those because we talk about the big names. We talk about Rourke, Butler, Hatcher, McInnes. A lot of the success the team had goes to guys that we haven't talked about necessarily yet. My unsung hero for the team is Sean White. He 95.1%. They call him Money White. He was money once again this year.
Yeah.
You pointed out, Richard, to me before, he missed more converts than he missed field goals this year. He missed 2 field goals, but 3 converts. Like, who does that?
It's a weird stuff.
And, he's a guy that wasn't needed a whole ton this year because the offense was so good. Like, he attempted only 41 field goals. That was the least in the entire league among starting kickers. Outside of the Riders kicker, who they started for 1 game and let him kick 2 field goals. But he wasn't needed a whole ton, but he was money once again when called upon. And I know he's getting up there in terms of football age, but I hope we see more out of Sean White for as many years as they can milk out of him because he keeps making the field goals. And he came in clutch, too, in that playoff game against Calgary with the game-winning field goal late in the game when they needed him the most. Maybe they were able to keep his leg fresh throughout the season for the clutch kick when they needed it. So Sean White stands out to me, Money White, as an unsung hero. Richard, who else stands out for you as an unsung hero for the year?
Unsung heroes. TJ Lee, he didn't play the whole season. And I'm not a big conspiracy guy, but I kind of feel like when they didn't back last year because he had the Achilles the year before, he's a little bit older. I think they just might have gone to him and said, I can see Ryan Rigg made him just pulling him off to the side and being like, we're going to bring you in closer to the end of the season, down the home stretch, and, we want you on the team. We want you here. And because their defense had a different mentality, like his ability to really rally the younger players, as opposed to, I was kind of figuring that role would really be taken by Gary Peters, but I think Gary Peters was nursing some kind of crazy injury because, if you looked at all their injury reports, he was always the last 6-7 weeks, he was always on there with limited practice, and then he's a game time decision, and then he'd go out there and gut it out. But teams picked on him like crazy down the stretch. And which you never see, he 2-3 years before that, he's, PFF stats are through the roof. People just got to the point where they didn't even throw his way because he was so lights out. And, for him to, have the type of year that he had, props to him for fighting through it and gutting it out. But towards the end, you could kind of tell he was a bit of a liability out there. His leadership and different things were still, I think, useful because their secondary is so young. Between Beaulieu, Finley was another, I think, unsung hero that, for him to step in as a raw rookie playing safety and have a string of 4 games with an interception was pretty amazing to see. Ken Carter Jr., him coming in. I mean, he's getting all the accolades for his catch and stuff like that, but Deontay Williams was another unsung hero. I think him stepping in, I think a lot of the talk was about Adam O'Clair coming over from Saskatchewan. I think he came from Saskatchewan, Adam. But yeah, him coming over, a lot of talk was about that. But I think Deontay Williams, man, he just, the physicality of the hits that he was, punishing people with was, made people think twice about catching the ball when he was around, So, because was it Philpott in the West semi that he laid out at the end there? Was that Deontay Williams? I think that was him. So, but yeah, anyways, so a bunch of those guys, definitely. There's a bunch of unsung heroes on the offensive line, I'd say, too, that when they had some injury problems, I figured their big offseason acquisition was going to be, the name escapes me now, but the Dijon Allen on the offensive line, he was their big signing, and I don't think he played more than 10 games, maybe.
Yeah, I think he was injured for a while, right?
He was injured for a long time, and they just brought him back towards the end of the season. So, guys stepping into that role and being able to move around, like the Kelly Woodruffs and the, Covington was out, or not Covington, their center was out for a while. So, the Andrew Pearson stepping in and, guys like that, moving themselves around and being willing to work at positions they don't normally go to, I think was also, something that, you don't hear a lot about, but, kind of like the, Ferdinand from Saskatchewan. He always got a lot of accolades for, for being willing to just go wherever the offense needed him and play through the roof when he does. So yeah, so it's pretty. Those would be some of my, my sister says seven McGee showing up late in the season with touchdowns. So
yeah, and honestly, I was going to just mention him actually just before the message came through. Seven McGee always, you know what? It wasn't also just the return touchdown that he got. I mean, that was pretty sweet. But it was also that he always did move the field pretty well. I mean, if there was one thing about even the Grey Cup champion Rough Riders that was kind of eluding us a little bit this year was that, yes, Mario Alford did not have as great of a year as he used to have. He wasn't getting those big yards or getting those good returns all the time. Seven McGee was really good at just getting at least 10, 15, 20 yards, making sure that the ball was always moving forward, didn't fumble anything. He was very good at covering football. I don't think he had a single fumble the whole season. So that's pretty good as well. No, honestly, great returner for the BC Lions. And I think that's all he does is return, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, he was a backup receiver in there for a couple of games as well. But to add to it, I think he took over the starting job in the return game because I think Jermaine Jackson started the year in that returner role for the first 4 games, and I can't remember if he got injured.
Williams.
But Terry Williams was last year, right? And they ended up cutting him this offseason.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was going to be a brand new face no matter what at the returner position for the team. It started with some promising games at receiver in the preseason, if I remember correctly. He looked kind of good there as well. So he seemed like the next thing. And then he did okay early in the season. Again, I can't remember, unfortunately, if he got injured or if he just lost his job to performance. Probably got injured, and then McGee stepped in and did so good in the return game that, Jackson did get his spot back there. And
I think McGee was injured at the beginning of the season, actually. I think that was part of it a little bit. So he was nursing something, I think. So.
But as a guy who's never really played on the team before in a notable role, to be injured at the start of the season, and even if he were slated potentially to be the starter, you run the risk of another guy comes in as the hot hand, you don't get that job back. So encouraging for him to see him get those 14 games in. And yeah, he had a solid season there in the return game as well. We're definitely not capping this at an hour, just as we expected coming in, because we're almost an hour in and we still got more to talk about here. Yeah. But we all kind of expected that. So welcome to bonus hour, I guess, of the podcast once again, folks. Like we said before the show, anytime Adam and I are both here, we know it's going over an hour. We've talked a lot about the team as a whole. I'm interested to know from both of you about talking some of the games specifically, of which games on the schedule from the season stood out to you the most. I kind of talked about one of the ones that stood out to me was that early Winnipeg game early on, because it was like, oh, this looks bleak. And then coming back against Winnipeg the next week and same thing. It was like, okay, this team could be in for a struggle this season. And how bad is Rourke's injury going to be coming out of that? And then they turn it around. But I have some others in mind as well, but I'm interested to hear from both of you as we can go to you first, Richard, of which game or two from this season stood out the most to you.
Yeah, I mean, off the top of my head, the 50 burger that they put on Calgary.
Which one?
Well, I think they only dropped 50 on Calgary once.
Oh, yes. Okay. They dropped 50 on Calgary. They had 50 dropped on them by Toronto.
Yeah. So, I mean, both of them are definitely memorable, for very different reasons. I think for, I mean, that's definitely probably one of the most enjoyable games I had from watching them. Was it just everything clicked, like And for them to go into Calgary after the season and start that Calgary had, they had starting to pull back a little bit at that point in time in the year. But for them to go into Calgary, I think it was in Calgary, and for them to drop 50 in someone else's stadium, like that's pretty impressive, in any situation, So, but yeah, I mean, I go back to the Ottawa game as one of, the one that kind of sticks in my, like the one that they should never have lost.
Okay, I was going to say the loss or the win.
No, the loss. I mean, the loss is definitely way more memorable than the win. For them to be up like that, and then for Ottawa to score 18 in the fourth, to come back, the crumb back, and it just hurt so much. And for them to, from that point on, they didn't lose a game till the Western Final, right? Like there's something, I don't know. Rourke just at that point was just like get on my back. We're outscoring everybody from here on out. I don't know what happened and what the team said or what happened, but that loss, really galvanized the team in some way, or motivated them. Like there's no way we should lose this. I don't know what happened there, but I think sometimes you can learn more about yourself by losing than you can by winning. And a lot of the flaws and things that were going wrong with the team, I think, were really amplified and in that loss. And so it was really nice to see them use that as a stepping point for the rest of the season and not really look back after that. So.
Yeah, I'm guessing Nathan Rourke must have said it was his time and decided to go and start winning a bunch of games. No, honestly, that was the biggest one I think you could possibly have, Richard, was the loss against the Ottawa Red Blacks. I mean, you're right. Dustin Crum came into that game, ended up winning it for him. And after that, BC went out like a house on fire, essentially every other game in the year. I mean, you look at how they won. Most of them were well over a field goal for wins, minus maybe the West semifinal. Other than that, it was over 7 points, or it was at least 7 points for most of those wins. So something that obviously happened at that point. And before that, it was win a few, lose a few, win a few, lose a few. You won the first game of the season, then went on a 3-game skid. But that, mind you, again, you got to put an asterisk beside that. That's when Nathan Rourke was probably banged up and injured with the oblique. Then they went into Montreal, ended up winning a big one there. Then they go into Edmonton, win one, and then they go to Saskatchewan. And you think they got some momentum. No, the Riders take them out. So it was back and forth there for a little while, and then you're right. Just that Ottawa game, something clicked, and after that, you're right, it was two different teams after that. And Nathan Rourke just went on the world tour of I'm going to win the Grey Cup this year, except for the fact that, there was one catch by Tommy Neal. Otherwise, BC Lions were probably arguably in the second half of the season. I think every person just did not want to play the BC Lions.
That being said, Adam, the Lions had no business winning that game against Calgary in the Western semi. Like,
that's true. Yeah.
I think Calgary wasn't great either.
Calgary put up like 500 yards of offense or something. Like it was, they came and played their hearts out in BC Place. They had something to prove, and BC did put enough plays together to win the game, but full marks to Calgary on that. I expected them to come in and just kind of, have a so-so game, and BC was gonna, but it was way closer than I thought it was going to be. And, and I felt like in a lot of ways, they were probably the better team that day. But when you got a special player on your side, you don't have to be the better team sometimes or every time, you just have to have enough plays to overcome some of those deficiencies. So.
And that goes back to what I was saying before too, is like, this team's going to score 30. Well, they're going to score 33. Right. And that's exactly what happened in that West semifinal as Calgary brought their best offensive game. That was the best VA look the entire season, I thought. This was after BC. Like BC was on a stretch of 5 games before that of 24 points or less allowed, where the defense was really honed in. So it was a shock to see them producing that much. And the Lions offense just did just enough in that one. To me, you guys both talked about the loss to Ottawa. For me, the win against Ottawa the week after was almost more defining, because we were starting to look at a stretch here where the wheels could have easily fallen off potentially, because the 2 games before with the bye week in between, that 52-34 loss to Toronto was just ugly all the way around. To have 52 dropped on you by the Argos there. And then coming out of the bye, okay, time to regroup after that. You go into Ottawa, and I remember being a little concerned. Like, Ottawa, like, according to the fantasy charts, was one of the better teams at shutting down quarterbacks and dominant wide receivers and stuff. And it was like, okay, maybe they'll cause a problem for them. And that was probably one of the offense's worst games of the season, was that initial loss to Ottawa. They kind of put the points up in the second half, but I remember early it was looking kind of bleak there offensively for the team, and they blow it there, and they let Ottawa come back to beat them. And now you're looking at, this team is kind of fighting for its playoff lives. This is the point in the season where Calgary is now hot, or has been hot all season as well. And then they really come back strong. Offense puts up a key day. Rourke is back in that rematch against Ottawa the week after, carries that momentum into that 52-23 shellacking of Calgary. And that one, followed by a 14-point win over the Stamps 2 weeks later, was when we started to shift the tides from this is Saskatchewan and Calgary for first place in the West Division as the dominant 2 forces that everybody's going to have to go through, to, oh man, like, BC's going to take second in the West and can easily take Calgary, and Calgary's not this force we thought they were anymore. And that's exactly what ended up happening. The Lions rallied with 6 or 7 straight wins to end the season to somehow finish second in the West, despite the slow start to the year that they had, where they were 3-5 coming into their first bye at week 9. So they rallied a lot down the stretch, and maybe it was the perfect storm, because I always say that a home and home series is typically going to be kind of a split situation, and maybe it was a lucky draw of the schedule to get Ottawa right back again next week and get to kind of exercise those demons heading into a key divisional matchup against the Stamps.
Well, I mean, you could even go back further, right? You look at the 2 games against Hamilton, a couple before that, and you kind of go, they lost a game they shouldn't have lost against Hamilton at home, where Carter had the interception. Like, there was so much momentum, and then they just let Bo march down the field and score that touchdown at the end. But they come back the next week in Ottawa, they had a bye, but it was their next game. So they got to go into Hamilton, and they clawed out an overtime win in that game, and so it was just, where they actually forced a fumble in OT to kind of lock it away. So the defense is kind of what, sealed out. And it's not like because they scored so many touchdowns in overtime that Hamilton couldn't keep up. It was, the defense, it was White fumbled, it caused a fumble on White or whatever. But yeah, so, there's a couple of these tipping points, but it's kind of that gets back to that, like what Adam was saying is like, a couple of good things, a couple of bad things, you kind of bounce back, but then, it kind of, you could say it was the loss, or you could say it was the win against Ottawa, but something happened in that stretch of time there where, they figured it out and kind of started putting the things together. And that's where I kind of, you look at some of their late season additions, the TJ Lee, the, you can find on YouTube his after his speeches in the locker room, and you kind of go, there's no way this guy's not having an impact on the, the hype and getting guys up for the game and getting people, excited about what's going on. And then just the additions of Levi Bell and Bradley Anae on the 2 edges, to kind of help with the extra pressure put on the quarterback. So, and the emergence of Jonah Tabai, I would say too, he might actually get us some looks down in the NFL. I don't know if he'll stick down there necessarily. It's just too small. But yeah, his second half was on fire. Like, he was a force. So, yeah.
And that kind of takes us into the playoff run where, this team, like you guys said, coming into the playoffs was the hottest team in the CFL. Nobody wanted to play them. I think a lot of people had BC potentially going off to the to the Grey Cup, coming into the playoffs and playoff predictions. Certainly a lot of people had them beating Calgary like in round one, going off of those 2 wins over Calgary down the stretch, which we've talked about the kind of the ending of that game a little bit. But the one asterisk on there was, can you play in Saskatchewan in the cold? And that was my worry for the team and why I was somewhat doubtful of them coming in. And that's been a problem for this team for years, it seems, right? Like they, when it comes to the playoffs, play great at home. When it comes to going on the road to Winnipeg, going on the road to Saskatchewan, this team seems to struggle. And they do, unfortunately, end their season in the West final, 24-21 loss to the Riders there. What went wrong in that game for them, Richard, in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think that might be one of the things about the Buck Pierce offense was that he never groomed a backup running back. Like, yeah, he threw Horvat in a little bit speckled here and there, like when games were gone too far or whatever, and he ripped off a bunch of runs, in garbage time. But he never really gave him the chance to really, prove that he could handle the pressure situations, giving him a drive here and there in the middle of the game or, things like that. And so when Butler, was struggling with a bit of injury issues, you had to turn to him and you had to depend on him a little bit more. And, and I was really hopeful that, he would prove to be this great asset in those cold weather games. Like, a lot of people had talked about the thunder and lightning kind of aspect, like that big bruising back, and combined with Butler, who can be that more scat back style, they complement each other really well. But it never really came to be. And I don't know if that was his MO right from the get-go or what, but I would have liked to have seen Horvat throughout the year get some more playing time and a little more experience so that, when that situation arises, you're not sticking a guy in who doesn't know what his assignments are necessarily, hasn't seen it at full speed, just through walkthroughs and practice. So that's one thing I'd like to see them address. But when you get back to the Saskatchewan, I mean, yeah, I never really rewatched it, to be honest. It hurt a lot to come that close, to be up, and then to watch your defense rush 3 guys and let Harris pick you apart. It was pretty aggravating. I was watching it with my boys, and it was pretty somber mood in the house after that. But I remind myself of the expectations I had at the beginning of the season. I was like, no, like this was a long. We had to play a long game here, guys. This was not going to be our season, most likely right from the get-go. So, we're building here, and what they've got, and they're building. I keep reminding myself of that. So, but yeah, we were talking earlier on the chat about how many 2-and-outs they had. It was something like 8 or 9 2-and-outs that the offense had, and you just kind of go, "This is what's going on." So I don't know if it's play call. I know they had a bunch of bad drops in the first quarter, so I don't know if that's from the cold or what the deal was. But I mean, it wasn't even that cold of a day compared to what Saskatchewan can get. So yeah, so I don't really know.
The only thing I probably would say that maybe was the big deciding point in this game was, again, you said it earlier, James Butler was not able to maybe run the ball as successfully as an AJ Ouellette. AJ Ouellette had some big runs in that game. If he wouldn't have made one fumble, this game might have been a lot different also. I mean, yep. It was AJ Ouellette running the football down the middle of the BC Lions' throat and getting those 7 yards or so. Anyways, that's kind of what I seen was really the big difference in this game. Essentially, the Riders had some drops too right at the beginning of the game. Keon Schaefer-Baker kind of looked pretty average at the beginning of the game, but again, the cold weather, I don't know if that's really a reason. I keep saying it shouldn't be. Nathan Rourke, honestly, he still looked like a magician out there for most of it. I think the offensive line letting all that pressure on Nathan Rourke cause maybe a couple of quick throws or throws that maybe shouldn't have been. But I think
they hit him in the hands, Adam. They hit him in the hands.
No,
They
that's
just dropped them. They just dropped them.
Yeah, true enough. And I mean, yeah, so that wasn't the case either then. Yep.
Literally what I was doing to the screen. It was like, hit you in the hands. Come on, grab the ball.
Fair enough. So, but like I said, the what do you call running game is really what I seen was the big difference in this one here. And yeah, other than that, Saskatchewan, honestly, you said that the Calgary Stampeders or the BC Lions didn't deserve to win the game in the West semi. I'll admit it, the Riders probably didn't deserve to win the game in the West final, but you know what? As we probably both will say, we'll both take it.
100%.
Yeah, we talked about those 2-and-outs at the start of the game or throughout the game, and it was the first 3 drives of the game for BC went 2-and-outs. Like, they were lucky to come out of that first half actually with the lead, and their defense, did enough to hold the Riders to 4 points in the first half, 1 point in the first quarter, despite the offensive inefficiencies. But where it kind of fell apart for me was the start of that third quarter, just looking at the play-by-play where the Riders get the ball at the start of the third quarter. They take up a 4-minute drive downfield, score that touchdown, 2-and-out right after that for the Lions offense. The Riders go out there. Lions defense forces a fumble, recovers the ball. Okay, this is our chance at the Riders' 40-yard line. 10-yard pass to Justin McInnis complete. 23-yard pass to Justin McInnis again. They get down to the 7-yard line. Rourke throws an interception at the 4-yard line, and the Riders get the ball back there. And they go on to score a field goal there, but that's like a huge momentum swing. And then, it's a back and forth in the fourth quarter there still as well. But to me, early on in this game, it was like, okay, this is one of the few cases this year where, Rourke's off of his game. And, everybody seemed a little bit off because we just talked about Sean White missed 2 field goals all season. He also missed his only field goal attempt in this game. So it just kind of seemed to be a combination of everything for the Lions here.
On a side note, Richard, as well, why is it every time BC comes into Saskatchewan, there's always one weird interception that happens?
I don't know. Last year that was so bizarre. Even the one where Hatcher was trying to lean, I'm like, what are you doing? You're gonna. It
just always happens in Saskatchewan. I don't know.
So. I mean, BC has a tendency to do that, right? Like, I remember, 2 years ago, we had the last game of the year for home field against the Bombers, and the Lions complete a pass to Dominic Rhymes, and he gets up and tries to run for a touchdown and gets tackled with no time.
I remember that.
And you're just kind of like, we would have had home field. Like, they would have been playing in the Dome if they won that game. Instead, we have to go to Winnipeg and play in the cold, and and not in front of your home crowd. You're traveling, like all that stuff, and so it was just, yeah.
So I guess we're close enough to Christmas time here. If there is one thing for the BC Lions that you want to get as a BC Lions fan for Christmas, what's the one thing you want besides Sean White back because he's coming to Saskatchewan because we need him?
He's going to be good for one more year. I don't know how much he can handle the deep kicks, and with them changing the field and all that stuff. Yeah, I have a hard time seeing him stick. Like, next year might be his swan song. So it'd be sad. I would hate to see him go. He's Mr. Clutch, but yeah. I think I'd like to see them keep a few pieces. Pressure on a quarterback. Let's put it that way. Like, consistent, they led the lead in sacks, but I don't think they led the league in pressures. I think, or maybe they put it this way, stopping the run. If we could stop the run, I'd be happy. I think they got some of that close to the end of the season. I think that Jonah Tavai in there, a couple other guys. Hendricks was banged up a little bit. I think when him and Tavai in the middle can definitely be beneficial. So, but yeah, outside of that, I don't have don't have a lot of complaints about the Lions right now. So, to be honest with you, I'm looking more optimistic to next year. And like I said, when I Buck Pierce, I kind of had a 2 or 3 year plan in mind with him coming over. So maybe a defensive coordinator, but I don't think they're getting rid of Benavides. So they would have done it by now. So I can't really wish for that. So I can wish, I guess. but yeah, I don't know. So
Ryan, what do you think the Lions need?
Yeah, as we kind of taking a look ahead to the offseason, disappointing in there in the playoffs for them after a promising season heading into it. You hope they can run it back on offense the same way they did this year. They're going to have to bring back the number of pieces. Some of those offensive line pieces are free agents. James Butler is a free agent currently. They already extended Hatcher last week, so that's a huge one for them. I think McInnes is under contract, so they got the big two. They're under contract at receiver. I'm just taking a look through the list now. Most of the crew, Berryhill, Katoy, I think, are also, so they can run back. Rourke, obviously, still under contract. They can run back most of the offense here. Yeah, Eberhardt's the only receiver that currently is unsigned for the team, and I can see them trying to bring him back. Maybe a little depth at receiver would be my one thing, because they got lucky this year that none of these top guys got injured, and for the 1 or 2 games they missed, like the pieces that came in, they didn't wow me necessarily, and that's hard to do as a depth 5th or 6th receiver, sure, but I think there is still room there to add a little bit of depth. And then I think you nailed it, Richard, that they need to stop the run, because if I'm another team and I'm looking at how I'm going to beat the BC Lions, I'm trying to run the ball down their throat and keep Nathan Rourke off the field as long as I possibly can. And if you can force them into a passing situation, well, they're probably not going to outpass you in terms of a shootout there. So a little bit of improvement in the run game, I think, is the biggest focus for me on the defensive side of the ball. Adam, what about you?
I think what I'd like to see is just them taking it in the defensive side of the football in general. I mean, overall, they've had some pretty good plays. I think they've got probably one of the best. I think a defensive back in Jackson Finley. Jackson Finley, is it? Yeah. I think they got one of the best Canadian defensive backs that you could possibly have. I think he's probably going to. I want to see him take another step forward next year. And I would like to see them maybe pick up another piece in the defensive line. Again, that's more into what you were saying, Richard, about run block. I think that if they can do that, this team here is a very dangerous team already in the offense. They just need a good running back to can block a little bit for Nathan Rourke. He doesn't have to do a lot in the run game, but he has to do some a little bit, whoever it is, without getting injured. Otherwise, I think this team pretty much, again, it still rides in how far Nathan Rourke takes them. If Rourke is healthy and they goes all 18 games, this team could be a team that I think could be challenging for first place in the West next year. And I'm not even saying that because I'd like my Riders to be. But you know what? Honestly, I think the BC Lions are one of those teams that's going to really make a step forward again. Disappointing loss this year, but I think they're going to be right back into it right away.
I will say one other thing I'd like them to focus on this offseason. I don't know what the necessary approach for it is in terms of personnel that they bring in, is discipline for the team as well, because you pointed out in our document here, Richard, most penalty yards in the CFL this year for the BC Lions. They also, as good as they were in almost every offensive stat, they weren't great in terms of turnovers either. And that's one knock on Rourke's play this year, is as a result of trying to force the ball downfield as much as they did, they were 6th in interceptions, had what is that, the 3rd or 4th most interceptions in the CFL, 22 on the season. They had the 2nd most fumbles lost on the season as well. So they have the offensive ability to overcome most of those, but you're going to run into some games where that costly turnover comes at the right moment. So I would like to see, as Rourke continues to advance his game, as the team continues to develop, kind of honing in on those things in particular as well. And yeah, it's such an interesting statistic too, looking at it when we talk about those big plays, that the team was first in all of these categories for yards and points and stuff. but had the 7th most time of possession. And their time of possession average per game was less than half the game. So it meant most games the other team had the ball for more, but they were finding a way to put up the points. So if they can keep doing as much as they did with the little time it took them to do so, then they're probably going to be pretty all right.
Well, if they can find a way to get the defense to give them the ball more.
Yeah.
If the defense can get off the field, then right, like that's what I kept saying, it's just like, get off the field. Come on, get the offense to battle back. Like, get them, so. But anyways.
Also, whoever made the comment about return of Moj and Julio, Caravana's radio coverage. Yes, I love those guys. They're awesome. I was listening to them while I was combining. They're great announcers. So yeah, that would be great to have those guys around.
Yeah, we often will mute the TV broadcast and throw on the local radio.
Awesome.
So, sorry, Susan.
No. So.
All right. Well, I think we've covered pretty much everything I had in mind to cover for the Lions 2025 season. Any final thoughts on the season before we get into wrapping things up from either of you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you touched on almost everything, but if you can score, they're scoring a touchdown 1 in every 4 possessions. That's not even counting field goals. Touchdowns. That's just touchdowns. A quarter of the time that you get the balls. It's just phenomenal. So, great job that way. I a couple of years as a Lions fan. So, we've got a great owner. We haven't even touched on him yet. The stuff that he's doing, touchdown Pacific, touchdown Kelowna. He's taking care of fans. He cares. You actually feel like he cares about you. He just doesn't want your money. You kind of look at some of the other teams in different businesses right now in the world of sports, and you kind of you feel like everybody just wants to take a little bit of your money all the time. And I don't get that feeling from him. I get the feeling that he wants to put on a show for people and he cares about people. And, right from concert kickoffs to, pregame shows to, all the stuff he's been doing. It's been pretty awesome, pretty fun. So if you guys ever make it out to the West Coast, look me up. We'll go check out a game. So.
Oh, I'd love that. And yeah, just compare how they're handling the World Cup situation between the Lions and the Toronto Argonauts next season. And it's a night and day difference. The Lions got away with the schedule, still those home games being local. I think they're on the road until week 4, but they have a bye. So it's 2 road games and then 2 home games. That will be a mild inconvenience at most, the World Cup for them. Whereas the Argos, good luck with what you're set for next week. We'll talk about that in our schedule breakdown episode more, I'm sure, Adam, but definitely a night and day difference and speaks volumes to what you were saying about Amar Doman and the impact he's had on this team, Richard. Any final thoughts on the Lions for you, Adam?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, this is one of the most entertaining teams right now in the CFL in a way because of Nathan Rourke and the team that he's got around him. I mean, and you're right, Amar Doman has done – nobody even remembers the David Braley eras, do they, anymore? I mean, it's – yeah. Well, BC was successful then. It just – the team was successful. The off-field stuff was maybe a little more different. But you know what? Honestly – I remember when the BC Lions at one time were one of these teams that everybody was wondering, geez, I don't know, is this team going to be able to be operated? And now you look at this team and they're having these usual regular season opener concerts that are just huge and people want to go and just check out a concert and they're filling the stadium. And they're filling the stadium even when it's not a concert game. People just want to go and watch the BC Lions because of the quarterback and the on-field product that they're showing. So, you know what? It's fun watching the BC Lions be successful. Hopefully they keep being successful. And you know what? I'm expecting big things out of them in 2026, to be honest, just because of that offense for one. But I think if they can add a few pieces in defense, yeah, this team might be in Calgary in November the 15th next year.
My only final thought on the team is we're an hour and a half in, and I'm both impressed and disappointed in myself that I have not yet mentioned put Nathan Rourke in the Hall of Fame. He is a special player. I'm excited to see him and the team for years to come, much like what you guys just said. All right, let's get into wrapping this up here. As I mentioned off the top of the show, coming up next, this is Wednesday, December 10th. On Tuesday next week, the 16th, I believe, we'll do another deep dive and we'll talk about the Hamilton Tiger Cats, which should be another fun team to talk about. We'll be joined by Rick from Hamilton Sports Central / Ticats Talk Network, also known as FM Fan in the Discord community, to talk everything Ticats. That should be a lot of fun. And then Thursday, a couple days later, Adam and I and Trey will be back here to talk all about the schedule and the shenanigans related to this year's schedule. And it's an interesting one, all right. We'll break that all down next week as well. We'll continue throughout the offseason next couple of months, trying to finish off the deep dive series and sprinkle in some other episodes in between. And then once we get into January, it'll be time to start previewing free agency. Heading into free agency month. The football season may have ended, but the podcast does not here at the Canadian Football Countdown. I'm having a lot of fun with off-season stuff so far. You can find the show on X at CF Countdown Pod or on Facebook at facebook.com/CF Countdown Pod, Blue Sky at CF Countdown Pod, whatever the Blue Sky handle is there. Check out all the other great shows from around the Canadian Football Podcast Network as well at CF Pod Network on X, Alternative Football Network shows at the official AFN on X or alternativefootballnetwork.com. Check out the Discord, link in the episode description. Free to join us over there. That's where you can find Richard a lot if you want to chat with him or us, or mostly him. You can chat with us there too. No, we're all pretty active in there as well. Richard, it's been so much fun to have you here on the podcast tonight talking about the Lions. I know we had you here, what was it, for an NFL draft, I think, a couple of years ago. It was your first debut on the show, and back again. I don't know if you've ever done this podcasting thing before, really, or considered doing it, but you're a natural, so you should consider doing it.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the invite, guys.
Yeah, it's been great having you here. Anything you want to plug before we wrap up the show?
I'm just going to do a shout-out to my family. Greta is in the chat, and my brother Matt said he was going to watch it too, so I'm just shouting out to them. We run our own fantasy league during the season, so I took home the champ this year, but it was close. My mom was in the top 30 at the beginning of the season, so yeah, so all big fans over there. So just shouting out to the fam.
Right on. Adam, where can people find everything going on with you?
Well, you can find me at Adam Stewart 1 if you really want to look at Twitter and probably see me going and complaining about hockey or something else at this moment. You know what? Right now, the biggest thing I've got going CFL things is the vote on which CFL team did the video best for the schedule release. I put out a poll there. I want to see what exactly everybody thinks. Of course, you got to go look over there and my reviews on all of them. Except for Toronto. Come on, Toronto. What are you doing? Anyways, you know what? Go and make a vote. See which one you like the best. I think I posted them all there so you can watch them right on the Discord channel. So just, you know what? Click on them, watch them, enjoy them, and let me know which one you thought was the best out of them all. And Thursday, I'll be bringing up the results for that. But in the meantime, hey, you can also yap to me also on the Discord channel or on X at Adam Stewart 1. Not much hockey to talk about this weekend. We're not playing anybody, but the next 3 weeks are critical. If you're really interested in senior hockey in Saskatchewan, we play our biggest rival on a home-and-home game series on the 19th, 20th, and then our second biggest rival on the 27th, 28th. So pretty much that determines our season right then and there for where we're going to place in the playoffs. So, yeah, can't believe we're already talking playoffs in hockey.
Well, as the unofficial official Canadian football podcast of the Theodore Buffaloes, go team.
Yeah.
Adam,
my support, Adam.
What's that, Richard?
I don't have a dog in the fight, so you can have my support. Go Buffalo.
Oh, there we go.
I don't think we play a team that are dog related, so we should be fine. We're good without dog in the fight.
Oh, perfect. Adam, you mentioned the schedule release videos. When are you recording the Let's Play of the Bombers schedule release video game that they released? I want to see that come out.
Well, I can't because it exploded at the end. And
Shoot.
it really didn't matter. So
I loved it. You can find me on X and Blue Sky at Cooper Trooper 42, or you can save your clicks and just not find me. It doesn't bring you much value, but I'm there. Yeah. Thanks again, Richard, for joining us tonight. You're welcome back anytime. Adam, good to have you back here this week as well. Everybody tuning in, thank you for joining us here as well. Whatever podcast platform you are listening on, we appreciate if you do all the fun things. Leave us a like, a comment, subscribe, rate, review, share the show with your friends, share it with your non-friends, share it with the Lions fans or non-Lions fans. Help us grow the show. We always appreciate that. And on behalf of Adam and special guest Richard, I'm Ryan saying thank you for listening. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.